right, welcome back to the Mass Effect Lorecast. This is your host, Tom, or Robots, and this is episode 7 already. Man, we've already blown through a month plus of this show. This is crazy. Crazy stuff.
Time's flying.
Time is flying. That other voice is N7 Legend, or Sam. How's it going, Sam?
It's going pretty well. As I mentioned in the pre-chat, I'm in the process of a move to the West Coast, so I am recording this from a different studio tonight. I am at my girlfriend's family's house. They have a bunch of lovely dogs, so if you hear any barking in the background, it is not a Varen. It is a dog. So,
well, good luck with that. My dogs are here, of course, as well. And I just moved back into the studio on the first floor as opposed to our extra bedroom. And the dogs are going to be much louder because they're behind me. So if you hear dogs, this might be the Mass Effect Dogcast today. But hopefully we don't hear that, because today we have the Asari to talk about. And why don't we just get right into it? So the Asari, what are we doing with the Asari? What are we going to be covering today, Sam?
Right. Well, as I kind of already brought up just briefly in the pre-chat, they are the most technologically advanced species in the Milky Way. They're culturally dominant. There's a lot to unpack, so I think we're going to start the episode with just kind of like the distinguishing physical characteristics. You know, just for the people who have not played Mass Effect, I think this will help form an image in their head. Okay, yeah. So where do we start? Sure. So the Asari have a blue to purplish skin tone. They have purple blood, which you see in several of the cinematics when there's injured Asari. And they have variations of facial markings, which are kind of similar to freckles on human beings. There is one notable exception to this rule about skin tones and complexions, and that's Shiala. You meet her in Mass Effect 1 on Pharos, and her skin has actually been made green because of a giant, intelligent plant life form called the Thorian. I'm not going to spoil too much because Mass Effect Legendary Edition is coming out very soon, in about 12 days. 12 days, and less than 2 weeks. Yeah, I know. It's so soon. And the Thorian is part of the Mass Effect 1 storyline, so you will encounter it pretty early. I'm not going to ruin it, but the Thorian is quite the adversary and really cool, really unique to the Mass Effect universe. But Shiala is a notable exception there. So they're also bipedal humanoids. And of all of the different intelligent alien species in Mass Effect, they are definitely the most human-like in appearance. However, they live to around 1,000 years old. So 10 times roughly the life expectancy of human beings in the Mass Effect universe. Can you imagine being 1,000 years old? That just, like, as I age, I start to realize how it is harder for older people to, stay up with whatever's going on with younger people, because their social circles are not the same. They fall into a cycle of life that's a little bit different. They also have a long history of knowledge and all of these things that other younger people don't have. And so they kind of pull apart from other groups in the world, right? But can you imagine being like 1,000 years old and having to deal with people who live to 100? Like, look, I'll put it this way. I'm about to be 27 and I already feel distant from the kids who are like just entering college now. Yeah. By your late 20s, you look at the kids that are like in their early 20s, or even the ones who just recently graduated, and you're just like, you guys are such babies. Like, you don't know what it's like to be an adult. It's hard. So I can only imagine what matriarch stage Asaris, those are the Asari who are older than 700 years old, how they feel about the Asari who are maybe 40 or 50 years old, which is crazy to say, right? Because 40 or 50 is middle age for a human being, right? Yeah. But that's like a teenager for an Asari. That's crazy. It's crazy to think about this. But and we see it in other genres too, elves or dwarves having different lifespans than humans, and their inability to understand each other, and they look down on humans because the humans don't have that much history to learn over years and years and years and years. But yeah, that is a considerable amount of time. So
being that they live 1,000 years, they were around during some of these historical events before human beings discovered the rest of the races.
Yeah, that's right. So all of the episodes that we've covered, the historical events thus far beforehand, the Asari were key players in that, because the Asari were the first contemporary species in the Mass Effect universe of this cycle to discover the Citadel. In fact, they were the first to achieve space flight. We'll get into their technological advancement and their society a little bit later in the second half. But I think I was racking my brain as to how to organize these notes before the episode. And I think for now, we'll put that off to the second half. And I think everyone will see why, because it's all going to come full circle in the end. But as I mentioned, they are bipedal humanoids. However, they're not like humans, even though they can wear human armor. And even though they can use all the same weapons as humans, they are monogendered.
Yeah, this is very interesting because to human eyes, they all look feminine.
Right. But they all appear feminine. However, they don't even think of gender like humans do because they're monogendered. So the differentiation isn't even there for Asari.
Right. So how do they process this? How does this work in their society?
So to human beings, they appear similar to human females, and even in the Codex refers to them as an all-female race. But Liara herself says, and notice I'm prescribing a gender there when I say herself, but right. Liara says that she is not precisely a woman. They are so she says she's not precisely a woman, and we'll get into the language of it in a little bit, but more or less, they use feminine pronouns with exceptions. There are Asari who prefer gender neutral pronouns. There are Asari who prefer some masculine pronouns. But the whole concept of pronouns to the Asari when using gendered pronouns is kind of just for the convenience of everyone else.
Right.
That's not for them.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like something that would even be part of their original language because they didn't have need of it. You know, it would be like, why don't you have a color? Why do you guys don't have a word for the color, sparblob? And it's like, well, sparblob isn't a color that we can see. So why would we have it doesn't make sense that we would even name a color that,
Exactly. And given the Omni tools the Omni tools that the characters wear in the Mass Effect universe have translators built into them. And that's the writing device that they use to explain how all the different races can communicate with each other real time, because they're just talking, and then one person's Omni device or Omni tool device is translating, sending that info to the other person's Omni tool device. That's translating real time, and that person can hear it in their native language and then respond the same way. Well, I wonder how much of the pronoun thing with Asari, the Omni tool is just taking care of it for them. So it's not even like a disconnect between the two species who are talking.
Right. Yeah, but for most intelligent species, they see them as being more female because of their body features and the shape of their bodies and their faces, things like that. Yeah.
And that goes for Quarians, Turians, human beings, of course, Krogans, Solarians as well. So the Asari are the only monogendered race, as far as I know. They're the only monogendered race in Mass Effect. And watch, I've said that, now I'm going to get corrected because the fan base always immediately knows there's always someone,
Right, of course.
Well, actually, I'm going to see it and be like, I'm going to see it and be like, oh my gosh, I knew that. Yeah. And then no one's going to be like, no, you didn't.
Inevitably, whenever you have to do any of these shows, you're going to forget something, or something's just not going to be part of what you discussed in the moment or whatever. And somebody's going to be like, actually, you could have brought this up, or you got this part wrong because the complete answer is this. And it's like, okay, well, thank you. We weren't covering that yet, but okay.
You're right.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, but yes. Yeah. So if they're all monogendered, how does reproduction work? It's obviously not sexual reproduction.
Well, that's the subject of much speculation within the Mass Effect universe. And I'm not talking about the fandom. That's something else.
that is a completely different topic. Well, actually, according to the fandom,
I don't want to talk about that part on air. But what we will talk about is within the Mass Effect universe, they are considered very attractive by like every contemporary intelligent species, and the Asari can also mate with any gender from any species.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is because the Asari's reproduction is asexual. That doesn't mean that they can procreate on their own. They can't. They need a partner. And I think the way that the game describes it is that it's kind of this mind meld thing where procreation can involve physical intimacy and touch. However, it's not a necessity. And it can like basically occur with something as simple as an embrace from a loved one. But the physical touch really isn't like a requirement. It's maybe like think of Spock with, like the
right.
Mind.
Right. What, you're pregnant? Why? I didn't know you were. Well, I accidentally gave somebody a hug. Sometimes it happens.
We were bonding. We were having a heart to heart, and I guess we're now more than BFFs.
I guess we're having a baby. Here we go.
Here's the truly crazy part that I think kind of evolved from a writing necessity, where what you just mentioned, where according to the lore, it's basically up to an Asari whether or not she becomes pregnant from the meld. And here, I'll just read from the wiki to kind of clarify something about Asari procreation. When an Asari provides 2 copies of her own genes to her offspring, one of which is passed on unaltered, the second set of genes is altered in a unique process called melding, also known as the joining or the union. During melding, the eyes of the Asari initiating the meld dilate as she consciously attunes her nervous system to her partner's, sending and receiving electrical impulses directly through the skin. However, physical contact is not strictly necessary. So melding isn't always used for reproductive purposes, and sometimes it's just to send and receive info. Which, by the way, that sounds a lot like the Protheans that we discussed last week. However, for anyone who's played Mass Effect, you can probably think of, regardless of whether or not you romanced Liara melds with Shepard on a number of occasions to try and decode the visions that Shepard receives from the Prothean beacon. But also, if you do romance Liara, the final mission before you make that final charge towards the beam on Earth, Liara melds with Shepard. So now it's kind of up for interpretation. Was that meld romantic? And was it meant to procreate? Is this why Liara is part of the trailer for the next Mass Effect game? Yeah. Because any of the times that she melded with Shepard, maybe for her it was a procreating meld.
Right. It wasn't up to Shepard. It was 100% up to her.
Right. And with Asari being 1,000-year lifespans, we don't really know what the gestation period is like.
Yeah.
For Asari. So it'd be really something if BioWare decided to say that, okay, well, no matter whether or not you romance Liara, Shepard has an offspring with Liara.
Right. And what if your character is Liara's child? Or another character in the game is Liara's child and you're somebody else. Right. But that would give them a direct way of you being Shepard's child, and a reason why Liara may want to go back to find the remains of Shepard in order to show her child, or honor the dead, because this is the person I melded with in order to create you. So the closest thing to here's your baby daddy, like that, maybe has something to do with it.
And really there's a lot of speculation that can come from that, just because, regardless of the partner, the offspring of the Asari is always going to be Asari, because there's no DNA actually taken from the partner. Does
the structure of the person they're melding with, it seems like it adjusts that other component, but does it do so in a way where it replicates similarities to that partner? Or is it like is it almost like using the individual as a random key generator for what the other component of the DNA is going to be?
It's kind of like they search for what's missing in the partner. I know that sounds a lot like opposites attract, and that can be a bit cliche, but because Asari search their partner's memories and their entire genetic history for desirable traits to pass on to their offspring, and they're doing that during the melding, diversifying is seen as an advancement of not just themselves and their family, but a contribution to all of Asari society, to their whole species. So it's kind of like a civic duty to mate outside of your race. And as I mentioned earlier, that this all sounds very Prothean-like if you think about it. And there's a reason for that we'll get into later. But partnering with another Asari then doesn't really add as much to the diversity to the gene pool. And it also makes the offspring more likely to become this thing called an Ardat Yakshi. And by the way, this Ardat Yakshi, it only happens with two Asari who mate. It doesn't happen with an Asari and a Krogan, or Asari and a human. It only happens with two Asari. So when two Asari mate, there's a chance that the offspring is going to become an Asari called an Ardat Yakshi. And basically, to put this bluntly, this is an Asari who is a sexual predator who murders their partners as a result of overloading their neurons during mating.
This is messed up.
This is really messed up.
This is the oh my god, this is like in our world there's like somebody may be a sexual predator, but on some level that's always based on a decision they make, right? Even if they have some sort of inherent bias towards being attracted to something, they still have that, like, I mean, ultimately it's their fault for following through with it, right? Like there is right and there is wrong. It doesn't matter if you're tempted 100-fold to eat the cheeseburger. At some point you just shouldn't eat the cheeseburger, like you just have to make that choice, right? And you can apply that to sexual attraction. Like just because you're sexually attracted to a person or a type of person or a certain age person doesn't mean that you should follow through with that. Like we're human beings, we should have self-control. But in this case, it's like they are destined to become this, and that opens up all sorts of questions.
Oh, right. And as I understand it, it's not a surefire thing that when two Asari mate, that they're going to create an Ardat Yakshi. However, when an Ardat Yakshi is created, they don't know right away. In fact, you only find out if you are an Ardat Yakshi, you only find out that you are one when you go to meld for the first time, and then that person's nervous system gets fried. Jeez. And now all of a sudden you're a murderer. Right. And you can't help it. It's not something you just have to become totally abstinent. Yeah. And just never melt. That's right. They have to become monastic. So there's like a monastery on, I forget the name of the planet right now, but there's a monastery built for the peaceful coexistence of Ardat Yakshi. However, there's a sociopathic element to Ardat Yakshi as well. Many Ardat Yakshi who discover this power become enthralled by it. And so they get like a little taste of the power of taking a life in that way, and they keep doing it over and over and over again. And so that's why this monastery was created, to try to A, reduce crime, and B, humanely deal with this genetic deficiency. Right. But because of the terrible, terrible side effects that can come from an Asari mating with another Asari, there is a huge, huge, huge stigma to when an Asari falls in love with another Asari and wants to be with that other Asari. Because what if? And so offspring, even if exactly. What if? It's like it's like in our own culture, incest. Like being attracted to a family member, or there was a time in many cultures where marrying a cousin was fine. It was okay. But in our culture today, there's a big stigma about that.
And there are genetic reasons why, I mean, there are social reasons why that's not a good idea, but there are also genetic reasons why that's not a good idea. So this is kind of that extrapolated and increased to this level of like, not only could your children have problems, but they also might accidentally murder people because of their biology, like,
and like it.
yeah. And the people that you're murdering are the kinds of people who could live 1,000 years, not just, 70 or 100 years. So their lives in some ways, I would assume that they don't reproduce as often, being that they are such a long-lived species.
Yeah, so they don't, and they don't give birth to like clutches of eggs either.
Right,
as far as I know, like it's puppies, like similar to a mammalian.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a huge stigma for anyone who is the product of two Asari partners. And even if that person isn't an Arda'yachi, there's still a huge stigma where calling someone a pureblood in Asari society is the greatest insult you could ever call them. Because it's basically accusing their parents of not contributing anything to society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in some ways, going against general common sense.
Yeah. And it's like a dereliction of duty almost for Asari. But enough about Asari procreation, as fascinated as the fandom is with that.
Sure. I wonder why.
You know what? If you're a listener and you'd like to learn more, you can be an intrepid soul and Google it, but I will warn you that you will find exactly what you're looking for.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats.
You don't do it at work,
but definitely don't do that. You might find yourself unemployed. But anyway, Asari are about the same size as humans, and they have the same number of digits, same basic musculoskeletal structure. And that also might explain why so many Asari doctors cater their practices to human patients as well in the Mass Effect universe. So at this point, you're probably thinking, okay, so they just sound like blue humans, right? They just sound like blue humans.
Blue monogender humans that look kind of like women. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is there to differentiate them from the hot green alien girl trope? You know what I mean? That was made so popular. And what was that, Star Trek?
It sounds like Star Trek thing. Like I get a very specific picture of like a woman like swooning onto like Captain Kirk or somebody who's like holding a blaster or something. Like
right.
1970s, 1960s imagery.
There is one thing that differentiates them, and that is hair. No, they don't have hair. They have tentacles.
They've got tentacle hair.
But it's not. So Liara, if she were, a real person.
You know what's funny? The first time I read that line, I read it. Hair. He works on the show notes, and he's got little bullet points. And this one says hair? Question mark. Nah, tentacles. I read that testicles the first time I read it. I guess we know what I need to start searching. Anyway, go on.
So you probably thought this episode was going to go really wild.
No,
he's like, do I ask
for a moment? I was like, wait, and then I was like, oh no, tentacles. Okay, I was like, wait, but yes.
So maybe that'll be a DLC in the future. I don't know.
God. Oh man.
I hope not. But so they're not really tentacles. That's not the right name for them. And Liara actually resents it when Joker calls them that. But they are quote unquote semi-flexible cartilage-based scalp crests that grow into shape. And these structures are rigid. They don't flop everywhere, as some people believe.
But what if they did?
That Liara has.
That would be great. What if they could like whip their tentacles to the side and be like,
the textures in the game kind of make it look like they might be able to.
Yeah.
But as I understand it, they're actually more similar to like the carapace on top of Turian's heads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because
it looks like the same texture as the skin, which you would assume is semi-malleable, right? Like skin is. They don't look hard.
However, I think they were designed to have features that took some features and made them more human-like from all of the Mass Effect.
Uh-oh. And Seven's having some connection difficulties. And Seven, come back.
Supposed to break filterings. Oh no.
Now you're catching up. All of a sudden it went and caught back up. You're back.
Okay, good. I'm here. All right. So we will try to go into the mid-break as fast as possible. So but basically, there are a lot of misperceptions floating around about the Asari, about their procreation, about, their promiscuity, that kind of thing. But in the second half of the show, we're going to explain why by the time Mass Effect 1 begins, Asari society has flourished to the point of being almost indomitable.
Indomitable. That's a great word. All right. Well, that's a wonderful word to move to the middle of the show. So we'll be right back.
Message coming in. Patching it through.
I am sovereign, and this station is mine. I like the sound of that.
So I remembered this time not to jump in too early. I'm learning. I'm an intelligent machine.
He can be taught.
I can be taught. Welcome everybody to the middle of the show. Thank you for tuning in. This show is taking off like a rocket. I was checking out the charts today on like the podcast charts. When you do a podcast, you can sign up to these services that will track your performance compared to other shows and those kinds of things. You can see like where do you compare to other video games and things like that. Check this out. I shared this on Twitter, and thanks to you guys, because this is on you guys. This is not us. This is you guys, because you've been listening to the show and sharing with your friends and these kinds of things. Right now on the video game podcast charts, we are 89th. The Mass Effect Lorecast is the 89th most popular video game podcast. That is intense. That is insane. To give you some reference here, the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, which I've been doing for over 2 years now, is currently 67th. The Fallout Lorecast is 58th on the list of top podcasts. This one is 89th. That is amazing. So thank you for listening to the show, for coming back for each episode, for sharing it with your friends, for leaving ratings and reviews, which you guys have continued to do as well. I can't say enough. And Seven, how do you feel about this?
I feel incredibly humbled. I've mentioned it on Twitter that, like we said at the beginning of this episode, this is episode 7. We've been doing this for like a little bit more than a month. And I love Mass Effect, and that's why I wanted to start doing this. And so to see that people actually enjoy listening to it and want to come back and listen to us talk about Mass Effect more, it's just kind of surreal to me. But maybe that's because I'm new to podcasting. Maybe, I'm not sure, but I'm just loving it. I'm loving the ride. I'm loving talking about it. I'm loving interacting with the community. And I can't wait for Legendary Edition to come out.
Oh my God, me too. I haven't pre-ordered it yet. I'm probably going to do that tonight because, and I'm, while we've been talking, I'm trying not to stop paying attention and look at like the pre-order bonuses and figure out which place is the best place to order it, all that stuff. So I need to go do that tonight. And I will definitely be streaming that when that comes out. I'm pretty sure I'm just going to play that on my PC, which I've been able to connect to my TV and my phone using apps that run through your internet. It's insane. Have you tried this? It is nuts. I can play my PC games on my phone now, which is crazy because they look awesome. And they're just on my phone. It's like having a Switch, and I got little controllers that connect to the sides. It's really, really cool. Anyway, I'll be digging into it. But thank you for everybody who has been tuning in, for sharing the show with your friends. If you have friends who are getting back into Mass Effect, anybody who's into the game, please share it with them. Let them know that this is a podcast they can be listening to brush up on their lore before they jump back into the Legendary Edition. And we're absolutely floored and flattered and humbled. You guys are amazing. So thank you so very much.
Spit it out, or are you trying to build suspense?
You're so dense, sir. Obviously, I do not know as much about human relationships as I thought.
Oh, you know what? We forgot to do the show us your Ryder segment. We got to do that. We usually do that during the middle too. What am I doing? I was so stammered over all the people listening to our show. Okay, let me get the image ready. Go ahead.
Ready to get a little bit more stammered because I have a special announcement that I did put in the Discord channel before. And that is that Jennifer Hale and Mark Meir themselves are both aware of this show's existence because I took it upon myself to tweet at them during the show last week. And I said, hey, you care to check out our show? And both of them liked the tweet. So I think I'm going to reach out to both of them and ask, hey, it'd be cool if Commander Shepard could record a 5-second little clip and say, I'm Commander Shepard and this is my favorite podcast on the Citadel.
Right. That would be awesome.
And this is going to be one of 3 responses. It's either going to be buzz off kid or like hell yeah, or it's going to be like silence.
Yeah, it might be no response. I'm sure they get lots of messages from everybody. But that would be amazing. Yeah, I'm Commander Shepard and this is the best podcast on the Citadel. Yeah, that would be great.
That would make my year.
Yeah, that would
make my year.
That would be amazing. So let's talk about our Ryder this week. Who is it? I've got the image ready.
Sure. So this Ryder comes to us from the Mothman's Ranger. This is Sarah Ryder. She is biotic focused, but is really skilled in rifles, snipers, pistols, shotguns, and melee, according to the Mothman's Ranger. So I think that means that Sarah Ryder is a combat specialist as well. Her background is she's a Pathfinder, of course, and the psych profile from Dr. Lexi Tapero, who, by the way, is an Asari, and she's an Asari doctor working on human beings. So I just kind of want to loop that into the episode. But Dr. Tapero says that Sarah Ryder exhibits heart and empathy in many situations. Also, the passion that she brings to her role as Pathfinder does not go unnoticed by those who work alongside her. However, Dr. Tapero would say that all of this is completely in line with her tendency to act impulsively in many situations. So another horoscope-like psych profile from Dr. Tapero. I think she's got a good newspaper column going. One of those old advice columns that people could write into. Yeah,
that's funny.
So here are some key decisions that Sarah Ryder made. She attempted peaceful contact with the Ket. She chose peaceful scientific exploration of the Helios cluster. She made peaceful contact with the Angara. She saved the Krogans, but left the Solarian Pathfinder behind. She successfully defeated the Archon and took control of Meridian. The Hyperion landed safely and is being rebuilt as Port Meridian, and she romanced Vetronix.
Now, this is the one game of the series I haven't dug into, so I don't really know what any of this stuff actually means. But I've heard people talking about it, that they've patched a lot of things. It's gotten better since release. Have you played it since the patches?
I have not. I need to, but I have heard the same thing, that it's much better now. That's become a trope, I think, in modern times, where games get released in like basically beta stage.
Right. Right.
But I will give it a shot. I'll give it a shot. I'm busy with the original trilogy, so I think after I'm done playing Legendary Edition, I'll probably give it a shot while I'm trying to kill time until Mass Effect 4 comes out. But
yeah. I think it would be fun to dive into it. In fact, I think it would be fun for me to Forrest Gump back into the Legendary Edition, play through all 3 of them in series, and then jump into this one and bring with it all the knowledge and the experiences I have from the other games. And we could have some conversations about that, say 6 months from now or whenever. That could be really, really cool.
Yeah, and that would certainly give us more content for a fourth wall breaking point of view. But yeah, the Andromeda has itself a lot of content to delve into, and I think a lot of it isn't fleshed out in the community just because for right now Andromeda is a standalone game. And it was so panned when it first came out, so it doesn't mean it's bad. It just, like many of the other games I cover, when they get first released, the public perception is like, this thing's terrible. And then of course, the dev team keeps fixing it and working on things, and then things end up better. So it'll be worth digging into in the future. Well, let's get back to the Asari. Let's talk about them and the Galactic Society. So how do they fit in? Sure. So I'm going to rattle off some fast facts about the Asari and where they stand now. The Asari are from the homeworld. Their homeworld is named Thessia, and it's a world that's just so rich in element zero that most beings have biotic tendencies. And naturally, we all know at the point in Mass Effect 1, when we enter the story, that when you talk about biotics, you have to talk about the Asari because they're kind of one and the same. The Asari are masters of biotics, almost all of them. Long ago, long time ago, their political environment evolved from what humanity can consider a Mediterranean civilization-like series of republic cities. And that Athenian-inspired heritage is still evident today throughout a lot of Asari government. They are incredibly advanced compared to other species, as I mentioned earlier. And just to put things in perspective of how advanced the Asari are, their version of automobiles were invented 30,000 years ago. And there's not a single one that's still around.
Well, if you think about how long they live, 30,000 years ago is 30 lifespans, which would be equivalent to, what is that, 3-4 times that is a generation? So a generation for humans is about 20 years in actuality. And humans live to be about 70 now. So that would be 120 generations, something like that.
Yeah. I think we could probably visualize it by... They're so advanced that if they were advancing at the same speed as humanity, or if humanity was advancing at the same speed as the Asari, it would mean that the ancient Egyptians would have had cars.
Yeah. And there are some thoughts about these kinds of things. Like, for example, had the Roman government not imploded and fallen apart, there are aspects of, say, ancient Roman culture, for example, or ancient Chinese culture that were moving forward in ways that were becoming very close to even things that are part of our modern world now. Obviously, the technology was different, but like the Dark Ages being a real thing in Europe that set human beings back like 1,000 years in development, and that's why the Renaissance was such a big thing, is because culture really fell apart, and it took us 1,000 years really to catch back up to where culture was during, say, the times of the Romans. So in a society that doesn't have that kind of hiccup, like, imagine if we were 1,000 years more advanced than we are now, like if we didn't go through that, like, and then you would look back and it wouldn't be that far away from something like this, or at least we'd be closer to something like this. But yeah, that's a significant period of time for sure.
Well, if we'd never had the Dark Ages, we might have found the Citadel by now. Who knows?
Oh yeah.
Maybe the Citadel is out there somewhere.
Maybe.
The truth is out there.
The truth is out there. Yeah.
X-Files.
Yeah. Dude, I've been watching The Expanse. I mentioned this before. That show is awesome. It's freaking awesome. Talking about finding alien crap in the world. Oh man. Very cool stuff. We wouldn't know. We would fall apart, dude. We wouldn't survive that. We would have problems.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've made a comment about it before and how I kind of obsessively read the news, and the formulation of like my opinion comes from that and like all the current events that are going on. And I'm just thinking, we better not find aliens.
Oh God.
Like, we better not.
We're not ready.
Now.
We're just not ready for it.
Not even close.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if, God forbid, we found an alien race like the Turians.
Like we like half of our population, or at least in the US, would be like, fake news. It's not real. I feel like that's a digitally edited image, and it's like that's an alien species at the White House right now talking to us.
This is a hoax created by the opposition party.
Right. Oh, it's those are government drones flying overhead. No, those are actual alien spaceships on their way to like talk with us. Like, no, not real. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry we took us on this little sidetrack, but yeah, that's a long period of time.
So speaking about current events, and how I mentioned earlier that the Asari were the first species of the cycle to achieve spaceflight and discover the mass relay system. Well, shortly thereafter, they found the Citadel and they formed the Council in 500 BCE. So 500 BCE is when they formed the Council.
Right.
At
so
this point,
in human terms, this was during, say, like the Iliad. This was Homer was trying to get home from Troy during this time period, roughly. Yeah, like Jesus didn't exist yet. Most of human beings were living in small groups. There were a few places that were like small cities.
Yeah, Abrahamic culture was totally in vogue.
Yeah, right. Yeah, in the Middle East, yeah, yep. you were either probably Babylonian, Sumerian, Egyptian, Hebrew, like Israelite.
Yeah. Most of your conversations probably have revolved around the Nile if you lived in northern Egypt.
Right. And trading goats. Like that was most of your day was like wheat and goat farming, like for most humans across the entire globe. Anybody who was around, whether it was in like old timey, southern or middle, like America, you were part of a tribe who was probably doing those same kind of things. Or if you were in Asia, you were probably, the Chinese culture was already a few thousand years old, but most people were probably just farming pigs and, rice. Like this is where we were at 500 BC.
So it sounds like we're riffing, but I do want to drive home the point, that this is how advanced the Asari were compared to not just humanity, but every other intelligent contemporary race of the cycle. And that's important because it has allowed the Asari to have the galaxy's largest economy. They have a monopoly on biotic tech trade. And because of their long lifespan, they're more inclined for a wait and see attitude than other species. Like they have a long-term investment mindset, or as current internet culture calls it, they don't have paper hands. Okay. Asari have diamond hands, and they don't care if they have short-term losses. They're in it for the long haul. And if it takes centuries or millennia to see ROI, they're in it.
Are they investing in Dogecoin or no? You think they're Bitcoin investors, but they're going, no, none of that Doge stuff.
I think they're Bitcoin investors, but I think that they're also altcoin investors. So I think that they're all over the market. I think that they're playing both sides of it,
and they're hodling everything.
Yes, exactly. They're waiting for a moonshot in some of the altcoins. Maybe they're Safe Moon fans. I'm not sure, but I'd like to think that they're Dogecoin fans.
All up in Ethereum,
that's a
no mercy says.
Plug.
Yeah,
that's a selfish plug for sure.
Yeah.
But because they had that long lifespan, they're much more of a patient and studious race, even when it comes to other types of military conflicts, even. And that might explain why the Asari counselor is so hesitant to actually do anything that helps Shepard and the Alliance and the Spectres, because they don't feel a rush really for anything at all.
Yeah. Well, Shepard's life to them is a flash in the pan. Like, an equivalent would be the lifespan of a dog to a human.
Yep, that's a perfect equivalent.
Yeah. It's a dog, but it's gonna, it'll be here for a while, maybe a decade, but then it'll be gone. And I've got a lot of my life to keep living.
Can you imagine like an Asari child is very sad because they're still a child, but their best friend who was a child,
their human friend got old and died. No, but that's true. Like we've got 2 dogs. One of them is 10 now, and she's starting to get old. She's got like little cysts that grow in her skin. You get little skin bumps. We'll have to take her to the vet and get them, taken off. And then, and this is funny, but do dogs fart more when they get old? Because she's been farting a lot.
Yes, they do.
They do.
Yeah, they do.
That's totally a thing. But like, you could be a young Asari and be like, oh, my friend Billy over here is getting old. He's farting more. He's got these skin marks. I gotta take him to the doctor. We've been friends since he was kids. A kid.
He goes by William now. It's all
Yeah. He doesn't want to play with me anymore. He doesn't want to run around outside. He just wants to sit in his lounge chair.
and sleep.
Sleep.
And watch
golf.
When did you get into golf, Billy? I thought that was last week.
Yeah, right. You didn't used to be into golf. That was like 4 years ago. I got into golf 4 years ago. That was only 4 years ago.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe Asari. You know how human beings are like, man, what did I eat for lunch yesterday? I can't even remember. Asari, like, what did I do for 10 years?
Right. Yeah. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, yeah. Everybody does that in their third century.
Oh man, what a child. But Asari are also pretty skilled diplomats, probably because of their longevity. You know, they've seen it all. So that would make anyone, I think, a shrewd diplomat. But their culture, and I'm talking everything from art to architecture to poetry to, you know, music, every part of their culture has dominated the Milky Way. And I want people, if you've ever played Civilization, which is another one of my favorite games, think of the culture victory. And you're trying to obtain the culture victory in Civ.
So the United States is playing like the military victory. And, I don't know, the Solarians are playing the science victory. And then they're playing the culture victory. That explains it. That's why they can't figure out how to do things or get along, because they'll have different cultural victory requirements. Man, that's funny. Yeah, I love Civ.
And so, Civ is so great. But I like, the older I get, the more I have to distance myself from it.
Oh, yeah.
Just because you have to put so much time into every single one game. But I still love it like so much. But
one more turn. And then it's 3 a.m. and you're like, I got to go work tomorrow. I have to put this down. Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that occurs to me about them is next week. The other thing that occurs to me about them is that if you were like, you know how like wacky art gets the more it develops, and in a lifetime you learn art as a child and then you get really good at it by the time you become an adult, and then you probably make some sort of progress as a young adult and then create some sort of masterpiece, and then you might create another masterpiece later on in your adult life, maybe change art forms a little bit and vary it. But imagine if you had 1,000 years to perfect your art form. It would get super weird. Like it would get so weird. I would imagine that a race that does this to like a human, like we wouldn't understand their art at all, because it would be so far out there, because it would be like understanding art is like being part of a conversation, right? Like to understand cubism, you have to have understood the reemergence of the classical art. And to understand that, you have to understand the whatever came before that and over again. Like to truly understand, say, modern pop music, you have to understand what was happening 10 years ago. And then you have to understand what happened in the 90s and the 80s. And then, the resurgence of, rock and roll. And like, if you understand the background of all of those things, you get to see like, oh, these are all the influences that they pull for this. This is how it makes sense artistically, not just as a song I put on while I wash my dishes or drive my car because I like to listen to music, right? A true art connoisseur understands the history of the art form. A history of art that goes back 30,000 years, and a life lasts 1,000 years has got to get super weird, right? That's got to be super weird.
And like I love those like references that you pull in, because it makes me think of internet culture today. And internet culture today is like so different from what it was 5-10 years ago. Yeah. And so when you think of like meme culture, think of like a meme that you saw the other day, and then all of the memes that you would have had to have seen before that for that meme to make sense to you. Right. Because and I'm sure that people listening to this might be able to relate, but like just the other day I saw a meme and I was like, I don't understand why that should be funny. Right. And that's how I knew it's a reference to
Rage Faces. What? Rage Faces hasn't been a thing for like 10 years. But it's funny now again. What?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if you guys remember deep fried memes.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
But yeah, so deep fried memes like were so meta. It was meta to the point of like, what the hell is going on? And so that has to have been like
Yes.
The closest I can come to equivocating what Asari art would be like to humans.
That's what I'm talking about. It's like a reference on top of a reference on top of a reference on top of a reference, to the point where you just go, why is that a picture of a man standing in a corner? And the Asari is like, you don't understand. You don't understand this?
It's elementary.
I mean, the lighting looks nice, but it's just a man's, like, I'm going to have to explain 30,000 years of art to you for you to get this, why this is a masterpiece. It's like, it's just a dude standing in a corner. Yeah.
And then also you're having to explain it to a dog, basically.
Right. It'd be
so
like,
it's like, why do I even bother?
Right. Here's a bone. Chew it. Go, go in your own corner.
Yeah.
Chew on your bone. Yeah.
Here's a world to colonize. Knock yourself out. So how did the Asari come to such status and stardom? You see what I did there? Stardom.
Yes. How did this work? Stardom. Not planetdom.
Not planetdom. Stardom. But they came to this level of sophistication. So if you listened last week, we mentioned the Protheans guiding Asari evolution. Well, this is coming full circle, and it's also kind of why I didn't want to touch on it too much last week, because I knew that we were going to get into it now.
All right, let's get into the deep end. Go.
The Protheans deliberately concocted this guise of the goddess Athame to uplift the Asari through numerous pieces of knowledge that they wouldn't have otherwise discovered for thousands of years, like agriculture and astronomy. And these are the building blocks for what we know to be human civilization. So if you give these pieces of knowledge to human beings, let's say 5,000 years before they otherwise discovered them, it accelerates everything after that exponentially. So what happens with the Asari is they accept these offerings of knowledge from who they perceive to be a god, and the Protheans facilitate that perception. And basically, the natural development of Asari was propelled forward at light speed. No pun intended there.
Actual light speed.
Actual light speed.
Yeah. Because
it's likely due to Prothean influence that the Asari discovered FTL space travel. So Protheans went one step further than that, because of course, reaching in and meddling around to that degree wasn't enough. So they went one step further, and they genetically altered the Asari to become more skilled biotic users even. And so there's a part from the wiki I want to just read right now, because it really does a good job of describing just the extent to which the Protheans had manipulated the Asari's development. When the Protheans departed, when they left and they didn't interfere anymore with the Asari directly at all, they left a single beacon on Thessia, around which the Asari later built a lavish temple devoted to the goddess Athame. This beacon contained Vendetta, a Prothean VI, and over the following centuries was the source of countless technological advances that allowed the Asari to eventually become the most powerful species in the galaxy. The beacon's existence became a closely held state secret, as its revelation would have discredited the virtually universal belief that the Asari attained such heights on their own merit.
Right. So they were given the keys to the kingdom. They were like the favorite children, right? They were like the firstborn who you're like, all right, I'm going to buy you a car for your birthday, and I'm going to make sure you get into the best university. And then the other kids come along and you're just like, yeah, whatever, just do your thing.
Yeah. Hashtag privilege.
Yeah. They were the privileged children.
And of course, they refused to admit their privilege.
Of course, because privilege. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Why isn't all this easy for you guys? Right.
Yeah, exactly. And the human being who has the lifespan equivalent is telling them that they're privileged.
Right. Oh yeah. Very much so. Yeah. Ugh.
So basically, this is important because why did the Protheans interfere to this degree? Did the Protheans do this as kind of a hedge against their ultimate fate? Did they see what was coming with the Reapers and they're like, crap, we got to make backup plans for the continuity of intelligent life in this galaxy? Mm-hmm. Because Vendetta, the Prothean VI that it mentions, is exactly how Shepard learns that the Citadel is the catalyst for the Crucible. That's the same VI.
Yeah. It seems like they. I mean, it seems like they were. I mean, it seems like a backup plan. Like you don't want to raise some other species to the point where they can dethrone you, right? Where they take the things that you have given them and use them against you. Any intelligent race is going to make sure that doesn't happen. But at the same time, if you actually genuinely do care about these other creatures that you've been, and also why would you be helping them? Why would you be visiting them and help cultivating them if you didn't care about them in some way? Just like us and creatures on Earth, like, oh no, this species is becoming endangered, and then we take care of it and we help bring them back because we don't want them to become endangered because they're part of nature and we love nature and nature is a good thing, right? They might have that same kind of view of these other races and biomes across the galaxy. So if that's the case and they could foresee their own demise, then they would need at least one of them to be able to rise up earlier than the others in order to help everybody else out, or at least get a head start.
Yeah, and I failed to mention it, but the Protheans also saved the Asari world from asteroids and a ancient spacefaring civilization who basically just wanted to kill them all, take over. So the Protheans stepped in and directly saved them from those things. Someone mentioned in chat here, let's see, who was it? Yeah, No Mercy says in chat that the Protheans saw potential in the Asari, according to Javik, and they did. However, I'd like to revisit a detail that we said last week with the Protheans, and that is that the Protheans were okay with mating with the Asari. So now we start to look at some of the Asari abilities like the Mind Meld and the biotic capabilities, and I start to think, is this a relic from Prothean capabilities? Yeah,
it seems like it might be something that was passed into them, or through that. The dirty old man interpretation of this was that the Protheans wanted some hotties to do their bidding and to hook up with, and so they invented them and made them a thing. I'm sure there's some internet lore out there about that too. I haven't looked it up, but if this is a potential idea that occurs to me, having heard this creation span and knowing how some people are, that this could very well be a thing too, right? Like maybe the Protheans were the dirty old men of the universe.
That's totally possible. And of course, it is always the people in power positions that become like that. But the Protheans were certainly in power position,
right? But maybe it's wrong to maybe that's too broad of a brush. Maybe some of the Protheans were like that, and so some of the Protheans did this, and some of the Protheans took care of the humans, and some of the Protheans were more concerned with other things. Like to say that they as a complete culture did this universally is probably too broad a statement.
It probably is, but ultimately I think it continues along the same theme that we were talking about last week, which is standing on the shoulders of giants. And so the Asari stand on the shoulders of the Protheans, very much so. And the Protheans stood on the shoulders of the Inusanan. And this cycle of standing on each other's shoulders like that is probably how organic life gets to the point at the end of Mass Effect 3 where you can defeat the Reapers.
Right.
That's how it got there.
Right. And maybe, and I half joke about the dirty old man perspective on that. Maybe that was the thing, probably not. But it does seem much more likely that an overly intelligent species like this sees the pattern and they go, ultimately, if we're ever going to win, we have to pass things down to the people who will be here after us so that they can be equipped to actually figure out the solution. So let's give them a head start. And I would imagine they can't give everybody the same head start. So somebody has to have more of a head start. It just kind of makes sense.
Yeah. And I'm kind of like interested as to how many innovations did this Prothean VI give the Asari, and it being a state held secret, how sensitive was that secret? I'd love to see like side stories or fan fiction written about the Asari government had this journalist killed
right.
almost leaking the secret that would be the downfall of all faith in every public institution. And because it would, if that secret were to leak, every public institution will lose all of its faith across the largest economy in the galaxy.
Right.
Imagine the type of recession that would happen from that.
Right. Or there's or like the Prothean government is keeping it from the people, but there are the people who think it's a conspiracy that this actually did happen. And most people are like, no, that's ridiculous. That didn't happen. But they're the ones that are right.
Yeah, they have their own version of ancient astronaut theorists.
Right. Or the X-Files show, like it's the Prothean version of the X-Files where they're like, no, really, there was this alien race and it gave us all the information that started our culture. And no, that's ridiculous. Yeah. And they're like, we're going to find the truth. The truth is out there.
Yeah. But, yeah, that's pretty much, that's it for the Asari. I mean, they have a very, very complicated, intricate culture. I encourage anyone who's curious to learn more about the Asari to play the games. And if that still doesn't, I think, quench your thirst for knowledge, go online, but go to the wiki. As I've mentioned and warned earlier before in the episode, there is some questionable content on the internet. Big surprise there.
Yeah, right.
But centered around the Asari the most. So yeah, if you're curious about, religion, religion, that's super cool in itself. Their religion is called Siari, and it's pantheistic, I think. And basically, now knowing what you know after having listened to this episode, you realize what they're actually Protheans, but that's not what common belief is for the Asari.
Yeah. Well, this is very cool. A lot of stuff I wasn't aware of in this one. I especially am interested in which of our listeners is going to write about the X-Files Asari version with I don't know, Sculler and Moldy. Maybe that's their names. But thanks for filling us in on this stuff on this episode. Sculler and Moldy. Oh man. Oh, guys, thank you for tuning in.
It's a Hanar investigator.
No. Mulder and Scully are the real X-Files. Those are the human ones. The Asari ones are going to be called Sculler and Moldy. That's the joke. Sorry, no mercy. That wasn't a mistake. That was on purpose. Well, anyway, thanks guys for tuning in. Thank you, chat, for being here. It's always fun to see your comments, and thank you everybody for listening again. We really appreciate you being here and listening to the show. And Sam, thank you for taking the time to work on this, even though you've kind of been in the midst of things. We will not be here next week because you will be traveling. You're going to be actually doing a lot of your moving. You were able to set up kind of this temporary thing for this week, but next week we're going to take a week off. But we will be back the week after that with some of our impressions of the Legendary Edition, because we'll have time to start that out. In 2 weeks.
It's coming up so soon.
Yeah,
so
12
soon.
days.
In 1 week, I will be on my way to the West Coast, stopping in Yellowstone. So, and it's no problem for me to do what I can and put the show notes together and try to keep the show going when I can, because I love doing this. And as I mentioned, I was happy to see that the show is in the top 100 shows, but I love doing it. So even if it were in the bottom 100, I'd still be doing this.
We have 3 listeners. Congratulations. 3 people are listening to your show. Yes. 3 people.
Yes.
I mean, that's not a joke, but that's how a lot of podcasts start. A lot of times you start with 3 people and you just got to go from there, which is why plug. I work with a bunch of shows on the Robots Radio Rocket Club group, and I help them get their show started. We have a show that just released their 4th episode and hit 2,000 downloads. That's like 500 listeners per episode, which is awesome. So go check out the Robots Radio Discord for all the different shows. There's a whole bunch of stuff for you guys to listen to, and they are killing it. They're doing an awesome job as well. And if you want help launching your own podcast or improving your podcast, feel free to check out robotsradio.net, where where all our info is, and you can check out the Rocket Dash Club page and see if maybe you want to join us on the Rocket Club, and I can work with you every week in order to help you do your own podcast and market it to an audience and do all the things that I do with my own shows. And I can teach you how to do it. So go check that stuff out. And let's see, anything else you want to say, Sam, before we get going?
Well, normally I'd plug about streams, but as I mentioned, I'll be driving, so I don't think I'll be streaming until at least May 14th.
Yeah, you'll be set back up. But maybe for our next episode, because it will be post Legendary Edition at launch, we should do like a call-in episode and have people join us and talk about their impressions of the game. That would be fun.
That would be awesome. I'd love that.
Yeah, because we'll have a little bit of time to dig in, and chat's always here, and you guys can join us on the Discord and pop in and share your thoughts. Whether it's about the Legendary Edition or playing the game before, we can kind of just do a fun call-in episode with you guys. That would be a lot of fun. So yeah, let's do that. That'll be the plan for right now. I just made it up and we're going to go with it. So wonderful. But I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be streaming during the day, doing the Robots Radio Show. And the Robots Radio Show is going to continue to evolve. Right now, the first 15 minutes of it, I'm going over news for the day. And then there's going to be all sorts of other wacky stuff that happens, whether it's talking with other show hosts or other fun little things or playing games or whatever. And I might move it from noon to like maybe 2-ish in the afternoon. We'll see. I'm trying to figure out how to fit everything. It's going to evolve, but it's going to be awesome. So come back and join me on the stream, twitch.tv/robotsradio for that and for future episodes of this show. And check out N7 Legends Twitch stream. What is your account again?
Right now, it's still at kung_fu_kangaroo. I think I got 3 more weeks until Twitch will let me change that to N7 Legend. But if you want to connect with me on Twitter, it's at N7 the Legend. And you can find me in the Discord channel as well.
Yep. You can find me on Discord or on Twitter at robots_radio. And of course, there's at Cyberpunk. That's the show I just did, at Mass Effect Cast on Twitter as well. And we'll see you guys next time. Have a wonderful, safe travels, Sam and chat. Thank you for being here. We'll see you guys later. Have a good one. Thanks for tuning into the Mass Effect Lorecast. We'd love to hear your opinion and thoughts on the lore of Mass Effect. Reach out to us on Twitter at Mass Effect Cast, or check out the Robots Radio Discord. Also, you can send us an email at masseffectlorecast@gmail.com.